Techzine Talks, where Techzine analysts bridge the gap between IT solutions and the people who need them. Techzine is your single source of truth. For more information and insights, visit techzine.nl or techzine.eu. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast.
And welcome to a new episode of Techzine Talks. This episode will be in English because we have a guest on our show, Aongus Hegarty. He's President International Markets at Dell Technologies, and we're going to talk about sustainability. And Sander is also here, of course.
As usual, yes.
As usual. So, welcome, Aongus.
Great. Hey, Cohen. Hey, Sander. Delighted to be with you today. Thanks.
So, we're going to talk about sustainability. Where do we start? Do you have a nice introduction for us? What Dell Technologies is doing nowadays on sustainability, and we'll take off from there.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Look, sustainability for us as a company, Dell Technologies, and I think within the technology industry is a very significant focus. I think we all know the challenge that we're facing from a climate perspective, and it's incumbent on all of us individually at company levels to put a deep focus and emphasis and priority around this. From our perspective, we've set out clear goals and plans over the last decade that we've been measuring and tracking against. As we look forward in the decade ahead, we've set out a clear strategy and plan for what we call our progress made real goals, emphasized and focused around very clear targets that we measure and we report on an annual basis. And I think this is one of the key things about sustainability. You know, it's great to have these visions, it's great to have these goals, and we put them up on websites. It's time to start measuring them, reporting on them, and delivering on them. This is absolutely key, and that's our focus.
And just to be clear, it's also, I mean, more or less a necessity, or you're obligated as a company to do this, right? I mean, because you build a lot of stuff, and you sell a lot of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would say is that obligations, fair enough. We actually have it at the core of our philosophy, of our culture, and our values. This is mobilized by every team member in Dell. It's a priority we're hearing from our customers. We see it as an important aspect of our solutions and from a business perspective as well too. And of course, we know the part and the important part we play from a climate and sustainability perspective.
And in general, how hard is it for a company like Dell Technologies to go about being more sustainable and having more goals or more sustainable goals? And because depending on where you come from, maybe the transition is easier. I would imagine for Dell Technologies itself, it's quite a big challenge, right?
Yeah, it's a big challenge. I'd also put it as an opportunity because I think consumers and customers are making decisions on the companies they work with or the products and services that they buy based on what those companies, not just philosophy, but what they're actually doing to ensure that their product is as sustainable as possible. And so from that point of view, as I mentioned, it's been in our core DNA and focus for over a decade. So we're building on a very strong platform. And with our progress made real goals out to 2030, we've set some very ambitious goals. We've committed that for every product that we will sell and put in the market, that we'll take back an equivalent product and reuse and recycle that product.
But from that website, the progress made real part of your website, there's this. The quote, by 2030, for every product customer buys, will reuse or recycle. That quote, right?
Correct.
It's called a moonshot goal, right? In general, moonshots aren't very realistic. How realistic is this goal for you?
Well, our track record on, let's say, our last set of moonshot goals for the previous decade, we over-delivered them a year early. I can assure you that this is mobilized within our organization. It's at the core of everything we're doing, from our people, our operations, with our suppliers, on our products, reducing energy efficiency. We're measuring these and reporting publicly on an annual basis. Yeah. So this is not some aspirational goal that's out there a decade out. We'll worry about it when we get there. We're tracking, we're measuring, and reporting on an annual basis.
Yeah, so it's quite a realistic moonshot goal for you guys.
It is certainly a significant enhancement and improvement, which it has to be. Everybody needs to be setting clear goals that are not aspirational. They're clearly got to be measured and they've got to be delivered. We've targeted 100% of our packaging to be recycled or from renewable material in that time frame as well too. And on the core product itself, that 50% at least of that product will come from, in the case of our hardware, for example, reused, recycled materials as well too. So key, very specific goals and objectives, measurable and reported on.
Yeah. Will you be going for 100% on these parts as well, or is that just simply impossible because you need some new materials for your hardware every now and again anyway?
Yeah, no, I think if we can drive beyond the 50%, we certainly won't be holding ourselves back. I see these as I said, business imperatives. They are differentiations in our products and solutions that we provide to our customers. Our customers are putting into their RFPs, their requests for quotations, information about our sustainability goals and objectives. And clearly, if we can be the technology leader from a sustainable product, energy efficiency, and so on point of view, we can differentiate ourselves and win more business. Yeah. So we see it as part of our clear goals and objectives from a business perspective, as much as the importance of the climate and sustainability.
Yeah. And how tough are you going to be on your supply chain in this sense, right? Because you depend on a lot of different companies in your supply chain, I would imagine, right? So they need to adhere to these principles as well, otherwise you won't be able to deliver on your own goals. How hard are you going to be on them? Or
absolutely, Sander. It's an end to end we're measuring. We're not just measuring what happens within our own operations, our own organizations. It's right across our supply chain and logistics organizations as well too. We've set a goal, I think it's a 60% goal off the top of my head of reduction that we're targeting there. We're working directly with our suppliers. We have been for the last decade in the initiatives I mentioned, and of course forward as well too. We're working with them to make sure that we're measuring industry-wide specific targets and measurements. That's really important. We've got to make sure these are real, sustainable goals and objectives that we're achieving. So measurement is key. We're absolutely working hand in hand directly with them. We're sharing best practices. We're helping them around their own programs and initiatives. And of course, we're reviewing that as part of our quarterly supplier review processes that we do. So very clear goals, very clear objectives tracked and measured. And of course, that's part of our overall goals that I shared a few moments ago that we're targeting.
But can these suppliers choose for themselves on how they will reduce or be more sustainable, or will you decide for them how they should do that?
I think it's works both ways. We're a believer absolutely in the organization and team being directly involved in coming up with ideas, ways in which you can innovate. How can you make improvements? You know, we're not going to turn away any good ideas around this. So we'll come across from all our suppliers, creating those ideas, involving their teams and members in that whole process. But we will also share. So a good idea here, we want to share it across the supply base. We're doing the same actually with our customers. As we work with our customers, we formed a customer advisory council around sustainability. Our customers are very keen to learn from each other, to understand. We're sharing what we're doing in the technology industry, and they're also sharing as well too. So plenty of ideas, come forward, bring them on. We'll evaluate, work with them with our suppliers, with our customers right across, and then of course share that best practice right across the ecosystem.
And I was also wondering how you look at logistics, because many products are built in Asia, in China, South Korea, for example, PC monitors or laptop screens. They usually built in these regions. I was wondering, is there some pressure from Dell to move those factories to Europe or to the US as well, to have them broader available? Because I can imagine that all these shipments are not very sustainable.
Yeah, coming from our point of view, we're a global company. We have manufacturing and operations in all continents of the world. Yeah. For example, here in Europe, we've manufacturing operations both in Ireland and in Poland as well too. And so we're looking to manufacture our products, our operations close to our customers. We're not in a single or just two locations globally and then shipping our products around the world. We're manufacturing those products locally, close to our customers. We're also looking at the logistics, and this is an area that we've put a lot of work in over the last number of years, is other logistics options. Logistics, for example, like sea shipment, how do we use more of that? Rail networks as well too. How do we ensure that we reduce the footprint of emissions associated with the logistics of components or products as well too? But by being closer to the customers in the marketplaces, we're clearly reducing that last set of miles directly to our customers as well.
Yeah, because that could add quite a bit of complexity, I would imagine, because we live in a just-in-time economy, right? Everybody wants everything the next day, or sometimes even the same day, and I mean these trends they go against each other to a certain extent, right?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I think that we're a global company. Our customers are global. They're in all 180 countries around the world. So by bringing our products, our operations, by using more sustainable logistics options and capabilities, I think there's a lot of work all companies can do in reducing that footprint, those emissions. And that's got to be part of, and is part of, our end-to-end view to achieve the goals that we've laid out by 2030.
But do you think we can? Do you have to say to some customers, well, you can buy this from us, but we cannot deliver it tomorrow, but only the day after tomorrow, because we want to be sustainable? I mean, that's more or less the underlying question.
Well, let's take a company that's based globally. So rather than saying to a customer, "Hey, we'll build all your product. We have a manufacturing location in the United States, and we'll ship it to a location in the US," we say, "No. What are your requirements around the world? Let's understand those in the different continents and countries, and then we will allocate the manufacturing of those products closer to your end user usage of those products." So efforts like that really use our global footprint, and then, as I said, use more sustainable logistics options in getting those products to customers. Those types of initiatives, I think, can really enhance and reduce the emissions.
But will you also ask suppliers then to produce parts closer to your factories?
We work with many suppliers around the world, in which if I went to our operations in Poland, you'd see and many of our suppliers operating within that same ecosystem close to our operations and manufacturing. So again, back to the supplier point we were just making, and working with our suppliers and reducing that end-to-end emissions and increasing the sustainability. That's absolutely part of the focus, Cohen. So we evaluate all of those options as part of our goals that we've set out here as well too. One other point I'd love to add in is obviously we're also looking at the energy intensity of our products. This is a key point as well too. How can we ensure that our products' energy intensity is reduced? Over the last decade, we've reduced that by very close to 80% reduction, and we're now working on setting our goals for the years ahead, so we can continue to do that as well too.
How big is your influence in reducing those energy consumptions, right? Because you also have to deal with the likes of Intel and maybe other providers of components who do a lot of the energy saving for you, so to speak. So how big is your influence in the energy consumption of the devices themselves? I mean, for example, a laptop. I mean, how big is that influence that Dell Technologies can have?
Well, we certainly have a significant influence with all of our suppliers and partners on the componentry side. We clearly also can look at the design of our products. We do a lot of innovation around the design of our products with clear multiple elements of focus, and one of those clearly is around the energy intensity of those products, as well as the actual CO2 emissions in creating and manufacturing the product in the first place. And we had a project, you may be familiar with Luna, which is again a concept that we've been working on around, and this is important, is you can continue to enhance what you're doing, you can continue to evolve it, but how do you also innovate significantly to actually make a step change in relation to that? So the project Luna, for example, was all around how can we revolutionize the designs of our products? How can we look at the componentry? How could we make it more accessible? How could we make it more replaceable? And how could we make it more reusable?
What I found interesting about Project Luna is that there were some on the face of it, some small changes that can have big impact, right? So the reduction of the number of screws. I mean, you wouldn't be the first thing that you would think of if you were to think of this, right?
But it's all these small elements coming together, added up, that give you quite a step change. In that project, the motherboard was a big focus area for us. Could we shrink, the resources used, the materials used within that? The motherboard is one of the most intense from an energy perspective, for example. And I think the whole philosophy needs to move from, we used to talk about kind of using it and then recycling it. That's important for the environment. It needs to move to using it, reusing it multiple times, and then ultimately recycling it. And that's the direction we need to bring that in. And by designing products that are accessible, replaceable, and reusable within the componentry in the products, that's going to help us move forward in that direction. And so we're taking the concepts out of that project and now starting to build it into our product roadmaps and plans forward that will help us around the goals that we've set over the coming years.
The project Luna was for a Dell Latitude that you changed and optimized by redesigning it. Is that a theory or is it also in production?
So anything with a concept that you build, out of it comes great ideas and initiatives. And I would not narrow it to just being in Latitude. There's motherboards in all our products. So what we gain from that type of an initiative, we can take on the motherboards across all our products, workstations, desktops, other ranges of notebooks beyond Latitude as well too. So we may have done it in one particular area, but the learnings we get from it, the benefits, we then build into our roadmaps across the products.
Yes. Of course, I understand, but I was just wondering, did that Latitude go into production?
Well, we've just literally completed the concept piece. We're now taking those concepts and building into the design of new products forward.
Okay.
Clearly, building products we've designed over the last maybe 18 months, on the design cycles forward, we'll build those concepts and learnings into them and then bring those products to market. I can assure you, some of the things we've seen here will be absolutely bringing those concepts as enhancements to market as quickly as possible. They're big contributors to it, as you said, reducing the footprint from a...
So initially it was an R&D project to see where you could make the most, the best changes or the most impact by changing things. And like you say, motherboards are in a lot of your equipment, right? So they're also in your data center portfolio, for example. So it was an R&D project, but will we see anything resembling this? I mean, probably we will in the future, but will we see anything resembling this in the near future?
As soon as we can build it into the cycles from an R&D point of view into the new product, we'll get the concepts in, and as soon as we're ready to announce them, we'll absolutely share it with you guys first.
Do you expect any products this year?
I haven't reviewed the roadmaps on these particular concepts built in, but as soon as we're ready to announce what we've done in that area, we'll absolutely share it. But be assured, the reason we do these is to create innovative thinking, new concepts, new ideas, and then test those to see how we could apply them into the roadmaps. And that's exactly the step we're on at the moment.
And is this purely on R&D from Dell's side, or is this also with partners? Because the motherboard design, for example, that was one of your biggest saves. It was a 75% saving in size, which led to 50% savings in carbon emissions.
Correct.
I see.
We work all of these Cohen concepts with partners. There's very, very little we would ever do that we wouldn't be fully engaged with our partners. Working with people like Intel, for example, AMD, all our partners across our ecosystem in design and the enhancements that we can make.
Yeah, but I mean, getting back to that, I mean, is it because does the energy efficiency of a supplier of the CPU, for example, play an important role now in deciding which one you're going to go with? Because I mean, I think a lot of your products are still Intel based, whereas, for example, AMD, but ARM in the future can have a significant impact on energy efficiency. How does that play a role in the development of your products?
It's core and central to how we just talked about how we design our products. And it's core and central, obviously, to how we work with our partners. And we work with both AMD and with Intel in both our PCs and in our infrastructure technology and server technology as well, too. So working with both. I also believe by having choices, you create more innovation, you create more competition. That's always good. And that's what I think is also important here in getting to these goals and objectives, is that innovation as we talked about, for example, in the Luna project concept.
And how far do you take? I mean, we're talking now obviously about product design and other things, but how radically are you adjusting to these new goals in terms of workforce, but also in terms of real estate and all those things? I mean, it's much bigger than just a product, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. At the core of our organization, I'd say there's three elements we work on. One, a lot of what we talked about so far are products, our goals that we've set out around packaging, reuse of materials, take back, circular economy, etc. Second element is how do we mobilize our workforce? How do we mobilize our teams in the Netherlands, in our offices in Amsterdam, to be passionate about these areas? What can we do from our own office environment? What are we doing around plastic in those areas? We're on reuse and recycling of materials in our offices. And of course, more recently, it's been a very tough period of time over the last 2 years with the pandemic, but it also has created the opportunity for us to accelerate what we've been doing around what we call connected workplace or flexible hybrid working. Prior to the pandemic in the Netherlands and across the world, we have had about a third of our employees working in a remote, flexible way. That clearly has pivoted right now with lockdown and challenge in the Netherlands and many places to 100% of our office team members. And we see as we go forward working with our team members, they want to have that flexibility and choice. So by using mobile technology and giving that element, clearly that's a really, really important step also in reducing greenhouse gases and emissions from that point of view. And generally just mobilizing our teams around these areas, the passion they have around that. The third aspect, and this I think is a very important one, 2% of the emissions is in the technology sector and area. 98% is outside of that sector and area. Technology will play a very significant part in reducing the emissions in the 98%. New technology, emerging technology like the mobile we talked about, 5G, some of the AI data analytics areas as well. These are all emerging technology areas, the edge, IoT, embedded technology. They're going to help ensure that we can reduce carbon footprint, reduce emissions across a whole wide area of industries. So three key pillars of focus from our perspective.
To zoom in a bit on the renewable energy you just mentioned, one of your goals is 75% by 2030 and 100% by 2040. I was wondering, why not 100% by 2030? Because I think Amazon Web Services and Google Cloud and Microsoft Azure can also get those goals by 2030. So I was wondering what the big challenge for Dell is to get that goal by 2030.
Yeah, we're at 100% in many countries around the world already today. I mentioned our manufacturing operations in Ireland and in they're 100% powered by renewable energy sources. What we're clearly working on is how do we, in 180 countries globally, which is a much wider footprint of presence and operations versus the examples you gave a moment ago, how do we ensure in all 180 countries that we can drive that to 100% renewable materials? We're going to find the barriers that are holding us back. We're going to drive to. And if you know anything about our culture as a company, in any goal or metric, it's like, how do I beat that metric? How do I get ahead of that metric? So we'll be looking to be at a highest percentage possible each year forward from here. And of course, we've set out some milestones that you reference as well too. But it's in some of those geos and some of those countries getting access to renewable sources of energy, not offset real renewable sources of electricity and energy.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it's the factories or the office buildings, but it is geo. The reason is the geo. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And obviously we prioritize locations of a high energy usage, like the two examples I gave you in Europe, where we're at 100% already.
And just in general, right? Just to move towards some sort of a conclusion of this conversation. What's been, or what do you expect to be the hardest goal to achieve, right? Because there are a lot of goals, sub goals, or whatever you want to call them, inside this big challenge, the big push you're making in sustainability. What's the hardest one?
I think these are all challenging goals we've set out. The world and everybody in it needs to set challenging goals, given the situation we find ourselves in. And I guess ultimately the impact to our climate that is already locked in over the next number of years. So they have to be challenging, and none of them, I wouldn't say that one's easy, and that one's really hard. We've got to set challenging goals. But most importantly, where I started, you've got to measure against those goals and track and report on them. We would love, and that's what we're trying to do, is we're working in our own ecosystem with our suppliers. Where we're putting a huge emphasis now is with our customers. And how do we engage our customers with a passion also in this area and work together across the industries using technology to really drive sustainability, reduced use of electricity and carbon emissions.
And what's the uptake on that specific what you mentioned? So trying to get customers to be more engaged as well. Does it resonate well with the market in general?
Very strong within Europe. Countries like the Netherlands, of course, very, very strong. Very strong with private companies. Public sector, getting there. We have made a lot of submissions both at the EU level and a national government level, encouraging governments to build in criteria to their IT procurement and their RFPs that clearly calls out requirements and measures that criteria and weights it in decision making. That's the area we would like to see more progress. But
how fundamental? I mean, I think I've touched on this before. Again, I'd like to just to wrap it up. How fundamental are you in achieving these goals? Right. So, for example, if you mentioned the public sector, suppose they don't want to do this, you won't accept them as your customers anymore.
No, public sector. I would say we're already seeing progress in the public sector area. We're seeing it be built into RFPs. We'd like to see it be in more used more widely. We think it should be a key decision criteria on your choice of supply of product. In our case, obviously, technology.
Well, do your suppliers all also want to work with you on sustainability, or do you have problems convincing them?
No, absolutely they do. We've built it out as our key criteria. And of course, like everything in life, you have choices. And we work with the partners and suppliers that want to come on this journey with us. And delighted to say, looking back over the last 10 years, the progress we've made, we've got a fantastic network of suppliers and partners, and they'll be critical to delivering on our progress made real goals and objectives we set as a company.
Okay, so you will drop a supplier that doesn't want to.
We will certainly be encouraging them and work. Everyone needs to come on the journey with us. Nobody can get a pass and not participating.
Okay.
All right, but I mean, thank you. I think it was very instructional, or at least I learned a lot. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to us about sustainability. I think many companies can learn a lot from this. Any last tips you can give other entrepreneurs in how to be more sustainable?
No, look, I think the only point we didn't touch on is I think we all have a personal responsibility to do everything we can individually as well too. And I remember living in Amsterdam back in the early 90s and being, observing all of the recycling taking place at the end of my street. That was quite a new dynamic I hadn't seen in Ireland. Of course, we have it now and it's a big focus. But doing those small little things individually is also extremely important. We all have to play our part here.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. You can share this episode with your colleagues, friends, family, I don't know who else, but you can share. You can also rate us on Spotify and Apple iTunes. Thank you for listening, and we'll hear you next time, I guess.
Techzine Talks.
Bedankt voor luisteren. Tot de volgende keer.
Visit techzine.nl or techzine.eu. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast.